Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. On the last week of Dana White's Contender series, Bo Nickal got a first round triangle stoppage over Donovan Beard, and now he's earned himself a contract in the UFC, and there's a lot of talk about how high Bo Nickal's ceiling is in the UFC. There's a lot of hype behind him, and I wanted to make a video discussing, is Bo Nickal overhyped? Is Bo Nickal overrated? And in his UFC debut, who could we potentially see Bo Nickal fight? How is the UFC going to matchmake him? He called out Khamzat Chimaev in his post-fight interview, which is absolute insanity. There's people already saying Bo Nickal is the guy to dethrone Israel Adesanya, which is just absolute insanity. And there's even a lot of media members who think that Bo Nickal can come in and immediately compete with the top 15 of the middleweight division, which is something we haven't seen in a long while. A guy with this limited MMA experience getting this much hype before he's even entered the UFC. I've never seen this before. I mean, this is absolute insanity what we're seeing. And Bo Nickal, I mean, he has a cool name, but I mean, this guy is a hot prospect, and a lot of people see his future as being very bright. So I'm going to give you my take on it, and also how I think the UFC matches him up in his UFC debut. So you look at the fight with Donovan Beard. Donovan Beard is 7-1. Not a terrible record to have. Bo Nickal is now 3-0. He was 2-0 going into this fight. He goes out there. There's really no strikes really exchanged for the first 20, 30 seconds or so. Eventually, Bo Nickal throws an overhand left. He lands the overhand left, and as he's throwing it, he ducks down after he closes the distance with the overhand left. He takes Donovan Beard down, immediately starts looking for a guillotine, gets full mount. Donovan Beard kind of escapes the guillotine. I don't know if you want to say he escaped or Bo Nickal just gave it up and then immediately starts, scrambling for a triangle choke. Gets the triangle choke. The fight only lasted 52 seconds. And I know Donovan Beard is 7-1, okay? But let's be honest here. Let's look at Donovan Beard's 7-1 record so far. He has a win over a guy who's 3-0. He has a win over a guy who's 3-1. He has a loss to a guy who's 3-0. He has a win over a guy who's 7-6. A win over a guy who's 4-3. And then the rest of his wins are against guys who have not had a pro MMA fight. So all of them were making their pro MMA debut. So I get it. He's 7-1. But hasn't fought a lot of competition. The fight before that was the Dana White's Contender series the previous week, the previous show in August, where he fought Zach Borrego. And this fight, I mean, he got taken down immediately, and basically Bo Nickal immediately locked up a rear naked choke, 1 minute and 2 seconds. Before that, he made his pro debut against John Nolan, who also was making his pro debut, and he starched him out cold in 33 seconds. It's absolute insanity because Bo Nickal only has 2 minutes and 27 seconds in octagon time in pro MMA fights. That is just insane that we have a guy 2 minutes and 27 seconds in the cage, and people are already saying he's the guy to defeat Israel Adesanya. I think that is crazy, but that just goes to show how dominant he's looked, because even though a lot of the time I'll say we have to pump our brakes on a certain guy, you can also, you can look at the level of competition. This isn't the greatest level of competition, but Bo Nickal is just starting out in pro MMA, so it's not like he's being matched up super favorably. These are guys that are supposedly at the same point in their careers as Bo Nickal, so it's fine matchmaking. But it's just crazy to see a guy with now, he only has 3 MMA fights. 3 pro MMA fights, because I think he has 2 amateur MMA fights, but 3 pro fights. People are already saying he's very competitive with the top 15. So first off, before I even get into whether or not I think he's overrated, would he be able to compete with the top 15 in the UFC? And I looked over the middleweight division. It's not very grappling heavy, so I do think he has an opportunity. I do think he's a very interesting prospect. He has, the NCAA extensive wrestling background, but that's one facet of MMA. As far as defeating guys in the top 15, I just don't see it yet. I really don't. Maybe against Darren Till, brittle Darren Till, who's constantly injured, inactive, Wrestling has always been a bit suspect. I think maybe he could beat Darren Till, which is just insanity because Darren Till's ranked number 9. So there I am. I'm telling you guys, I think that Bo Nickal could defeat a guy within the top 10 of the UFC rankings. I know that sounds crazy, but to be honest, I don't like his chances against a lot of these guys. I mean, you start at the top of the division. He's not beating Israel Adesanya. From what I've seen right now, there is no evidence to support the fact that he beats Israel Adesanya. He's not beating Robert Whittaker. I think he has a better chance of beating Adesanya than he does against Whittaker. Cannonier, I don't think he's beating Cannonier. Marvin Vettori, I don't think he's beating Vettori. Alex Pereira, maybe. And the only reason I say that is because Pereira is a kickboxer, has limited MMA experience himself. Derek Brunson, I doubt it. Derek Brunson is kind of chinny, so maybe. Paulo Costa, absolutely not. Paulo Costa starches him. Sean Strickland, very doubtful. Jack Hermanson, very doubtful. Andre Muniz, maybe, but I think probably gets submitted. I just don't see him winning that fight. It's just too early to tell. I looked through, this top 15. I think it's unlikely he beats a lot of these guys. And the Darren Till is iffy, but I'm saying Darren Till is the only guy I really could see him potentially beating in the top 15. As far as his call out of Khamzat Chimaev, I got to applaud Bo Nickal for that because I love the attitude Bo Nickal has because he's saying, I'm already one of the best and I'm all ready to take on some of the best. I know the UFC, and I'm going to talk about how I think the UFC will matchmake him in a second, but we know how the UFC likes to matchmake some of these guys. Bo Nickal is out there screaming from the rooftops, I want to be pound for pound number 1. I'm ready to fight some of the guys in the top 15. I want to be middleweight champion. And you have to respect that attitude because there's some guys that will say that and then they're fighting, I get it that the UFC matches them up, but at the same time, they're not willing. They'll say, I'm the best in the world, but then they're not willing to take on some of these top guys. And now I don't think the UFC is going to match him up with these top guys, but I think Bo Nickal is sincere in his confidence that he will be able to beat some of these guys. And I think he would take these matchups. I don't think it's all talk. I think he truly believes this. But again, I don't think he's going to have a lot of success against the top 15 in the middleweight division. It's so early in his career. We haven't seen a lot of striking. And to answer the question, is Bo Nickal overrated or overhyped? I believe the answer to that question is yes. And if you look at Zach Borrego, he was 3-0 when Bo Nickal fought him. To get to 3-0, he fought a guy who was 4-8, 1-1, and 0-1. So, and I get that Bo Nickal is kind of at the point where he has to fight these type of guys. It's just, second fight in MMA. But the fact that people are ascribing this unbelievable amount of hype to him and this unbelievable confidence in his skill set. Now, Bo Nickal has the right to be confident in himself. I'm talking about fans. I'm talking about media. To look at these 3 wins, John Nolan, Zach Borrego, Donovan Beard, and even though they were very dominant and I think they were impressive, these 3 guys are no more than grocery store cashiers. I hate to say it. They're not good competition. And I get it. Bo Nickal's just starting to get into MMA. But you can't look at those 3 wins and say, oh, this guy can definitely compete with the elite of the elite at 185 pounds. You just cannot say that because these guys are not UFC caliber. They're not, they're never going to do anything in MMA, in my opinion. And you look at the guys they fought to even get the wins they have. Those guys have horrible records as well. So I think this is a, classic case of the UFC picking fights that, make sense, but they also knew that Bo Nickal was going to beat Zach Borrego. They knew that Bo Nickal was going to beat Donovan Beard. And, they were so confident that he was going to beat Donovan Beard. They already had EA UFC Sports 4 with a cover with Bo Nickal on it at the Apex. That's how much the UFC already believed that Bo Nickal was going to win this fight. And, to go back to a video I did last week, why did Raul get a contract but Bo Nickal didn't? Bo Nickal already had a contract with the UFC after he defeated Zach Borrego, and I believe even before he defeated Zach Borrego, but the UFC just wanted to give him more experience. The UFC, and this gets into matchmaking, the UFC is going to matchmake him in the UFC with favorable matchups. And I have no problem with that. You know, at his current record, 3-0, I have no problem with that outside of the fact that there's so much hype around him and he wants to fight elite's competition. I just kind of want to see him thrown in there with the elite of the elite in the middleweight division. I don't know if he could ever go down to 170. He doesn't look like a massive 185-pounder. But I think the UFC is going to match him up with somebody way outside the top 15. Dana White already said so in his Dana White Contender scrum. I think, you know, he's probably going to fight someone, if you look at MMA world rankings, probably someone around, 40 to 50 ranked. Because you look at right now on MMA ranking, worldrankings.com, Gregory Rodriguez is sitting at number 30. They're not giving Bo Nickal Gregory Rodriguez. It's just not happening. I have no idea. There's such an endless amount of options they could give him. Who knows? Maybe they give him Nick Diaz. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm just throwing that out there to joke around. But I could see him maybe giving him a Jordan Wright. I'm not sure if he's still in the roster or not. Maybe a Jamie Pickett coming off a couple losses just to get Bo Nickal in there, get him an impressive UFC debut. But if it was up to me right now, I kind of want to see Bo Nickal thrown to the Sharks, and I kind of want to see him fight someone in the top 15. But at the same time, I don't think, with the limited experience, I think he should be able to fight someone maybe from 15 to 20. A perfect matchup in my perfect world would be Bo Nickal versus Gerald Meerschaert. I think that'd be a great test for him. Gerald Meerschaert is a great measuring stick within the middleweight division. I know he got starched by Khamzat Chimaev, but since then, he's done very well. I mean, a lot of people thought he was going to go out there and get starched by Bruno Silva, but he went out there and beat Bruno Silva and won by submission. So Gerald Meerschaert, I think, would be a perfect UFC debut for Bo Nickal. But at the end of the day, I'm super interested to see where Bo Nickal goes from here. I do think he's overhyped. I do think he's overrated. The striking has been shown very limited. What have we seen? Maybe 10 seconds of striking from Bo Nickal at this point in time. The striking is a virtual unknown. We know he has elite wrestling. We know he has a very good jiu-jitsu and submission game. But it's just too early to tell. The hype is unbelievable. I think that Bo Nickal could never make it to the top 15. I think that is a real possibility. I'm not predicting that. I think it is a real possibility, and I think people are getting way too carried away just because Bo Nickal has that NCAA background, highly successful in wrestling in college, and for some reason, I get that that is a very important aspect of MMA, but for some reason, just because of that, they are acting like this guy is going to be UFC middleweight champion with only 3 pro MMA fights. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.